Today I will do only one task like that. So like planning
So,
is better, and I have a like plan like which is like written. I have notes that I feel that is very important because we think so many part I will do that, but we'll actually never do. We will forget.
so now tell me one thing. Why were you not able to do this very thing first time when you joined in 2024?
Yeah, right. Because like that time, I feel like I am very casual. I feel I'm not serious. Because I feel I will do in 2 months, I will do in 6 months, and even after 1 year also, I was not able to complete. Like I lost, in that. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Was there anything I mean, was there any other factor which was different this time? I'm trying to understand first time when you joined and did 7 tasks and then you
Yeah.
stopped, and now
Yeah.
again you started. So I want to
Yeah.
understand in between, was there some significant event which woke you up?
Yeah.
Some
Because
bad
like
interview, some bad interview, some bad
yeah.
negative feedback from the supervisor.
Yeah, like that happens, like that happens in with my manager. Like we have
Hmm.
some project, and we have clients, and we have to explain. I not stammered so much, but still, like I feel like the way I should be, like I was not able to do in that way. So I feel like I should be more good in that part when it comes to communication.
Hmm.
So I feel let's whatever my effort, let's try to finish all the tasks and let's see like what that make the difference after doing all the tasks in different situations.
Okay. Thank you, Gajendra. Thank you so much. Um, I think you've done an amazing job, and your last 6.3 task where you've given feedback on the course, that video also is very good, and and we will be sharing it with the wider audience to let people know what you think about the program. So over to Dr. Amit. Dr. Amit, over to you.
Do you want me to ask Gajendra some questions as well, or
I mean, if you've got any
anything
questions,
specific you want me to?
if you've got any questions, you can ask Gajendra, or you can, or whatever you want to say about on this theme. How can we complete whatever we start?
Yeah, big topic. How to complete what we start, story of my life. Um, तो तो मुझको दो चीजें लगी जो आपने बोला अजेंद्र। अभी मैं हिंदी में थोड़ा बोलूंगा। um, एक चीज तो लगी कि आपके जो नेगेटिव एक्सपीरियंसेस थे मैनेजर से बात करते हुए एंड सो ऑन, वो आपको मोटिवेशन, वहां से आपको थोड़ी मोटिवेशन मिली। और दूसरा आपने बोला कि प्रॉपर प्लानिंग बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट थी आपके लिए इस बार। तो जब आपने फिर से टीओपीजी ज्वाइन किया इस बार और सारे टास्क शुरू किए, 1 से 7 रिपीट किए, तो उन टास्क को आपने कैसे एक्सपीरियंस किया जो आपने रिपीट किए? याद है आपको कि आपका एक्सपीरियंस पिछला क्या था और इस बार आपने
यस,
क्या
यस।
क्या अलग किया?
या श्योर, मैं शेयर करना चाहूंगा। जब
हम्म।
मैंने फर्स्ट टाइम किया था, मैंने उस टाइम डिफरेंट सिचुएशंस में नहीं किया था, एंड आई ट्राइड ओनली English. And this time I tried in different language, like English and Hindi both. And I tried, I think, task one, I tried 4 times.
हम्म।
Yeah.
अच्छा।
Well,
ओके।
because what I feel when I done once, like it was not good. When I listened to my twice and thrice. So I do it 4 times. And I think for second, I do twice. Yeah. So, yeah, so that is the thing. Like doing in different language and different situation also. So that is the difference.
तो ये बहुत ही बुनियादी बात है एक्चुअली, जो अभी खिंजेंद्र ने बताया कि बहुत ही बुनियादी बात है। और ये बुनियादी बात स्पेसिफिकली स्टैमरिंग के लिए है, क्योंकि बिकॉज आवर स्टैमरिंग शोज अप डिफरेंटली इन डिफरेंट एनवायरनमेंट्स, हमको जो भी चीज़ ट्रांसफर करनी है हमको बहुत डिलिबरेटली ट्रांसफर करनी होगी अक्रॉस डिफरेंट एनवायरनमेंट्स, चाहे वो स्पीच मोटर टेक्निक है, चाहे बाउंसिंग है, प्रोलॉन्गेशन है, वॉलंटरी स्टैमरिंग है, जो भी है, अवॉइडेंस रिडक्शन है, सेल्फ डिस्क्लोजर है, वॉलंटरी स्टैमरिंग है, जो भी है, हमको प्लान करना होगा कि हम डिफरेंट डिफरेंट एनवायरनमेंट्स में वो सेम टास्क रिपीट करें। अगर वॉलंटरी स्टैमरिंग हमने एक सिचुएशन में की है तो उसको डिफरेंट सिचुएशन में करना चाहिए। अगर एक लिहाज से की है, एक टाइप की वॉलंटरी स्टैमरिंग की है, तो दूसरी टाइप हमको ट्राई करनी चाहिए। तो बुनियादी बात यह है कि बिकॉज स्टैमरिंग इज वेरिएबल, क्योंकि हमारी हकलाहट जो है हर एक सिचुएशन में स्लाइटली डिफरेंट प्रेजेंट करती है और सिचुएशन टू सिचुएशन में चेंजेस होते हैं, उसके अकॉर्डिंगली हमको प्रोसीड करना होगा। मतलब कि डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सिचुएशंस में हमको ये टेक्निक यूज करनी होगी, वॉलंटरी स्टैमिंग करनी होगी, ये सब कुछ करना होगा। इम्प्लिसिट इन दिस इज द आइडिया ऑफ स्टेपिंग आउट ऑफ योर कंफर्ट जोन, क्योंकि ये सारी सिचुएशंस जो हैं ये समान नहीं है। एक सिचुएशन ज्यादा चैलेंजिंग है, एक सिचुएशन कम चैलेंजिंग है। तो प्रॉपर प्लानिंग के साथ, विच इज द सेकंड पॉइंट दैट अजेंद्र सेड, विच इज प्रॉपर प्लानिंग के साथ, अगर प्रॉपर प्लानिंग नहीं होगी तो हम प्लान नहीं बना पाएंगे कि इस सिचुएशन में मुझको ऐसे लगता है, इस सिचुएशन में मुझको ऐसे लगता है, मैंने इस सिचुएशन में ट्राई किया, इस सिचुएशन में नहीं ट्राई किया, तो मैं कल इस सिचुएशन में ट्राई करके देखूंगा। These are all related concepts. They may seem separate, but they're all very related because successful treatment, and I'll talk a little bit later about what successful means because it means different things to different people. Success is not the same for everybody, right? The way you define success, the way you operationalize success is very important. तो जो भी आपकी definition है success की, उसी के मुताबिक जो है we need to act. So the idea is that stepping out of the comfort zone is very important. And the key here, which is part of what Gajendra also said, is in one word, experimentation. ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट कॉन्सेप्ट है स्टैमरिंग को शिफ्ट करने के लिए। अपना आइसबर्ग जो है, स्टैमरिंग का आइसबर्ग जो है, वो शिफ्ट करने के लिए एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन, अपने स्पीच के साथ, अपने एक्सपीरियंस के साथ प्रयोग करना। So that is very much part of the pitch, that is part of the narrative that Gajendra has also said. He experimented with different situations. He planned to experiment in different situations. I would add one more thing. Your practice, Gajendra, would be even more effective if you wrote about it. अगर आपने कोई रिफ्लेक्टिव प्रैक्टिस जो है, जर्नलिंग की प्रैक्टिस जो है, अपने नोट्स लिखना कि मैंने नोट्स आपने लिखे होंगे, जैसे आपने बोला कि आपने नोट्स लिखे थे कि मैं इस सिचुएशन में ये करने वाला हूँ, पार्ट ऑफ योर प्लानिंग। Closing the loop on the other end would be if you write down about your experience कि मैंने ये किया और उसका ये रिजल्ट रहा, मैंने ये किया, मैंने ये ठीक से किया, ये चीज में इंप्रूव कर सकता हूँ। This sort of a reflective practice is a very important part. So planning is not just at the beginning, but it's also closing the loop at the other end, which is, and this is also part of what Dr. Satyendra Srivastava has said in his podcast, 7 Steps to, changing the stammering mindset, which is review and record and review. वो क्या है? So what kind of way of giving yourself feedback? ये फीडबैक सिस्टम जो है ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है। स्पीच थेरेपी में क्या होता है कि इस फीडबैक जो है वो गारंटीड है। स्पीच थेरेपिस्ट आपको फीडबैक देगा। उसके अलावा जो है कोई प्रैक्टिसेस होंगी स्पीच थेरेपी में, जैसे कि जर्नलिंग है, तो आप अपने आप को फीडबैक देंगे। ये फीडबैक जो है ये इनकॉर्पोरेट होता है, नेचुरली इनकॉर्पोरेट होता है स्पीच थेरेपी कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, प्राइवेट पर्सनलाइज्ड केयर कॉन्टेक्स्ट में। ये फीडबैक जो है नेचुरली ऑटोमेटिकली इनकॉर्पोरेट हो जाता है। ये फीडबैक जो है ये is not incorporated in a systematic way in a peer-to-peer learning context or in a mentorship-driven context such as TISA or TOPG or whatever. So we have to simulate these things. There are things that we need to bring in that can make the practice more effective. So these are just some of the thoughts I have right now.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amit. All Whenever you're ready to share the successful case study, let me know. We can start. And sometime we can squeeze in a breakout room activity where the group can discuss and brainstorm about how to complete the course. They can talk and share the ideas. So, are you ready to share the case study, the clinical case study?
Um, Actually, I was hoping to do a slightly different thing before we get there a little bit. मैं लोगों से थोड़ा सा बात करना चाहता हूँ, इनपुट लेना चाहता हूँ कि आपको क्या लगता है कि I can talk about successful again. What is success? Talk about that a little bit क्योंकि इतना आसान नहीं है. Success can mean different things to different people, and it can mean different things to people at different times. That's another thing.
Yes.
So this is very much part of working and dealing with a lifespan condition
Yes.
that is
Yes.
stammering. So what input do other people have on what successful means? अगर आप स्पीच थेरेपी लेते या टीसा में टीओपीजी किया आपने या जो भी चेंज प्रोसेस में आप जा रहे हैं तो what does success mean to you? What would successful working with stammering in a successful way, let's just take it very broadly, what would that look like for you?
Shall we ask people to write a one-line text?
You can either write a one-line text, you can do that.
What is their
Certainly, you
idea
can
of improvement?
yes, certainly do that. But also, if you want to come off the microphone and chat a little bit about that and share, you can also do that.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do
In fact,
both.
you can read their text answers, and then you can even invite them
Okay.
to talk about it. So, guys,
I'm
prompt
actually
is
I'm actually not getting the text information. Maybe you can.
okay. I'll do the tweaking here.
Okay.
Just a minute. Show chat. Okay. In the meantime, people can start responding through chat in one line about what is their idea of improvement. If they go for a proper therapy, then how would they measure their improvement? उनको क्या लगेगा कि हाँ मुझे फर्क पड़ रहा है, मैं पहले से बेहतर हो रहा हूँ. So everyone can start thinking about it and start writing about it.
अगर आप मुझको co-host
मैंने
बना दें तो
co-host बना
मुझको
दिया
लगता है
मैंने.
कि
I've already
okay,
made you co-host.
then I should get all the text, but I'm not receiving. Has anybody
I've already
texted
made you
anything yet?
co-host. You are co-host now.
Okay. Has anybody texted anything yet? Because I'm not seeing anything.
What was the question, sir?
The question was कि Iraj आपको what is your definition of improvement or success?
Okay.
अगर आप स्पीच थेरेपी लें या इवन अगर आप हिस्सा में आपने टीओपीजी किया है अगर आपने कंप्लीट किया या कुछ सीरियसली उसको अंडरटेक किया तो उसका what does that mean? So what would improvement, what would success look like for you? That's the question.
And when you send your text, you can address it to Amit. You will see a drop-down list. 2. So in the 2 field, you can choose Dr. Amit's name, and then the message will go to him. Even if it comes to me, I will copy paste it to him. Don't worry. You start writing
Yeah, I can see that.
one line definitions. What do you think about improvement or success of a therapy?
If anybody wants to share anything verbally, अगर orally अगर आप mic को if you want to come off the microphone, Validating speech in public, how good we are before and after therapy. Sex will mean enjoying the life, not feeling the burden. Okay? So successful means enjoying life and not feeling the burden. When we do therapy and do TOPG, success is when we stammering freely in our everyday life. Okay? So, Dr. Vijay, do you have a comment or a question? Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah,
And very happy to see you
likewise.
in your face. Very happy to see you. So I want to share on that whatever I have experienced is the reduction in anxiety and fear. So that thing, I think I have mismeasured by the result that during the poster presentation, I felt very relaxed. In previous, the experience was not so good for me for poster presentations because it was one-to-one. The guides were asking the questions one-to-one, and it was very. The fear and anxiety was at peak previously, but I did practice some techniques, some grounding exercises, and that I was very happy when I finished that, and that resulted into award also. So that was the first kind of thing that happened with me. Uh, and the second thing, I shoot 2 YouTube videos, and that videos like previously I was doing the same thing, but these times whatever I have noticed was the reduction in the anxiety and fear. That previously I was feeling so what you call as anxiety and fear, that so there was like sweating in the palms, and my legs were shaking and all these things. But right now I did this with the techniques. Like I started the speech with like this, like namaskar shetkari bandhu and namaskar, like this namaskar shetkari शेतकरी बंधू and भगिनींनो, और वो means the starting was very good and powerful, and that gave me the lot of confidence, and so I did these like retakes were there, but the retakes were very less. Means I stammered while doing that, but the experience was very satisfying to me. And also the viewers, I mean, even the director has appreciated my talk very well. It was very big achievement for me. Like stammerer, director has phoned me and he said that the talk was very good, and we got 67,000 views in 2 days. And that were the highest views for the YouTube channel by our university. So it's a good thing that I'm not claiming that the stammering is. I mean, I have stopped the stammering and all these things, but I am very happy that the anxiety has been reduced. And what you call that I have got the weapons, that I can use the weapons now. Suppose I'm getting anxiety, then I will start prolongation. I will start with pausing that namaskar and all these things. I have got these weapons, and this thing anxiety has been reduced. That is.
Thank you very much. Huge applause. Thank you. Excellent. Okay. Let me read out a couple of other things. There's a pattern here in the responses. I don't know if you can see this, Dr. Srivastava, or if it is coming directly only to me, but I'll read out a few things. Successful means enjoying life, not feeling the burden. If we do therapy or do TOPG, success is when we stammer freely in our everyday lives. reducing fear and anxiety. So this is from Dr. Avare, obviously. I did a good poster presentation. I got an award. I got to shoot two YouTube videos with techniques, which were liked by a lot of the viewers. And one more comment from Ankit. Success for me would mean being comfortable with stammering, just like others are with their normal speech, not jumping myself out of fear or any other intrinsic or extrinsic factor. Ankit also just wrote, breaking the habit cycle. I'm overthinking out of fear, anxiety. How will I appear when I stammer? Fearing that I would not appear natural to others. Okay, and one more comment. Ease of talking, even if I stammer here and there. So I think there's a pattern here, right? Because we are not. Let me see if I can unpin Dr. Avare.
I can do this. I can do this.
Okay.
I can do this.
Okay. So what I see here is what is reported quite a bit in some new research, some recent research that has been done on our community here in the West, which is what are people looking for in terms of, how do people who stammer define successful treatment outcomes? For years, I think what has happened here, certainly it's happening all over the world, but I know examples of the US the most, so I'll speak to that. For years, I think the speech therapy had more of a singular focus, which was the speech. And the idea was to reduce the impairment component in the condition. So impairment and disability are related things, but they're slightly different things also. So I have to make sure I explain that first so people can understand what I mean. So impairment is some sort of a anomaly or defect or whatever you want to call it, something irregular, something abnormal in structure or function, body structure or function. Disability is what the person is not able to do as a result of that. So let's say, you were riding a cycle and you're going down the steps and you broke your leg. Okay, well, you have a structural impairment, your leg is broken. And there are things that we cannot do because our leg is broken. We can't climb up the stairs, we can't drive a car, those kinds of things. So the easiest way to think about this is from a medical model of disability versus the social model, right? In the medical model, what we are doing is reducing the impairment component. In the more social model, we are saying that the person is not able to do things because society has not created enough structures so that somebody with an impairment can also succeed. Right? So the impairment and the disability nexus, the connection, is together in the medical model, but it's separated in the social model, in the sense that a person with an impairment is disabled because they are not able to do certain things that are normative. Okay. If that is very clear, then I think you can apply this to the stammering experience. Speech therapy in the past, and I think that still exists in a pretty important way throughout the world, has been focused largely about reducing the impairment component, which is how can we talk more smoothly? How can we speak more fluently? Let's teach the person who stammers techniques so they can speak in a different way, correct the the misalignment and correct the activation of different muscles in the body so you can produce more fluent speech in a reliable way. Now, that is a very challenging and a very difficult thing to get behind across the board as being the only singular important treatment outcome. Because for most of us, that is not entirely achievable in a reliable way. And there are many reasons for it. There are many reasons why speech therapy that is targeted entirely on speech is actually not the most successful. I don't have to go into the reasons here right now, but there are many reasons for it, including the fact that stammering is neurological, right? There is only so much you can do in terms of managing the behavior when the brain has the proclivity to block. Certainly, there is a neuroplasticity component. The brain can be changed over time. There's research also that indicates that there are neuroplastic changes that happen in the brain after speech therapy is completed. But that's a particular kind of speech therapy done in a particular kind of a context where that works. For most of us, it is very difficult to manage the physical tension on our speech in a reliable kind of a way. So most of the recent research in treatment outcomes for stammering therapy have spoken to exactly what Dr. Aware is saying, and that is exactly what are the messages in the chat, that we want to focus on quality of life and reducing anxiety and fear, increasing confidence in speaking, increasing self-esteem. All these things are a lot more reasonable to achieve if we get out of the mindset that we have to be fluent. Interestingly, when you also look at the successful treatment outcomes for which a lot of data is available, most of the successful, in quotes, traditionally successful, I'm talking about traditionally successful, conventionally successful, historically successful, the way it's been defined, outcomes have been from programs where there is an overhaul of the existing speech pattern. So fluency shaping is a type of a therapy approach where people spend many hours a day over many days in residential facilities learning to speak differently, changing the rhythm, changing the timing, changing the tension, breathing in a different way, bringing your vocal folds together in a different way, articulating in a different way. So overhauling the speech motor pattern completely. If any of us were to go for those kinds of programs, which is not accessible to most people, even in the US, it is not accessible to most people, those fluency shaping programs, because they take a lot of time and they cost a lot of money. Those are the ones on which, if you use traditional treatment outcomes, which is change in the speech motor behavior, reliable, durable change in the speech motor behavior, those outcomes are actually the most robust, because those show that if you spend about 100 hours, this is no joke, 100 hours of therapy in a concentrated kind of way, you can actually overhaul the existing speech pattern. So people are generally much more fluent and stammering does not occur in a, frequently or with the kind of struggle that would occur without speech therapy. The other type of successful treatment outcomes are also found when we are not engaging very much in speech motor work, but engaging in more in avoidance reduction. So avoidance reduction, reducing fear and anxiety, desensitization, all of the curriculum that is part of TISA is the other way in which people experience successful treatment outcomes. And that is actually much more achievable to most of us, much more achievable, much more reasonable to most of us, because that involves connecting with society differently, changing the stammering mindset, becoming a little bit more desensitized to listener reactions. All of those things are much more achievable in a social, peer-to-peer learning context, such as TISA. Speech therapy can do both. I know speech therapists. I myself have done some work in the past where I have done exclusive work, more or less exclusive work with speech motor training. Also done some fair amount of work with desensitization and all of those kinds of things. And both can be successful. That's why I said, what do we define as success is very, very important. So in speech therapy, what happens is, I'll give you a very quick overview of this. What typically happens in speech therapy when we start with a client is that we do some diagnostic work. We do a fair amount of diagnostic work to figure out what the stammering pattern is, what the speech motor pattern itself is, to trying to understand how the person stammers. And we spend a lot of time on internal reaction. And we have diagnostic tools to allow us to tap into both of those things, to analyze the speech behavior, but also analyze the internal reactions. On the basis of that, with the client, never without, but with the client who drives this process, we come up with what are the measures of successful treatment. What does successful treatment 3 months out or 4 months out will look like for you in particular? That's one of the unique aspects about any sort of a customized therapy or individualized therapy approach, whether it is stammering or counseling or anything else. If you're paying money to go to somebody and they're creating a personalized care plan for you, that will be very much part of the expectation that they will come up with what activities and plans to get you to feel successful in the way that you have defined success. But what is very encouraging for me to note here is in this lounge is that most of the reactions that we have gotten so far, in fact, all of the reactions I've gotten in text are not about the speech very much. They're about anxiety and fear, which is a much more reasonable outcome than actually turning stammered speech into reliably fluent speech, which is, of course, much more challenging to do for most of us. So I'll just stop here and see if anybody has any questions or comments, but that is my take on it thus far.
Yes, guys, any questions? I just want to share one little story, one anecdote about finding your purpose for therapy or self-help or whatever. I read somewhere in the West that a very elderly gentleman came for speech therapy. He was a stammerer. He must have been, in his early 70s or so. And people asked, so the therapist asked him, Ki, why do you want to work on your stammering? And the old man said very sweetly that after 1 week, I'm going to the same church where we were married, and we are going to take the vows of marriage again. And this time I want to speak very fluently. I don't want to stammer in this ceremony when all our friends will be there. So that guy, he worked very seriously with his therapist and changed his speech. So I think sometimes we have to search our heart. Why do I want to work on my stammering? Do I have a strong enough reason for that or not? And I think in case of Gajendra also, something like that, I'm sure must have happened between his two attempts at TOPG. First time when he did up to task 7, then he went off for some time, then he came back again, and this time he completed the TOPG. So I think we have to search our hearts and find out, why do I want to work on it? Is it important enough for me or not? Am I willing to take out some time every day for this activity or not?
Yeah. This is actually speaks to what you just said, Dr. Srivastava, speaks very much to one more thing that we say, that real motivation for change actually happens when the pain of staying the same is more than the pain of changing. Because there's pain and challenge in both.
Yes.
So the pain of staying the same is more than the pain that involves changing. So this person here that he wanted to kind of read out his vows with less struggle,
In
pain
my
of
case
staying.
also,
Yeah.
in my case also, I was able to manage somehow, with avoidance, changing words, keeping quiet till the age of 44, 43, 43, 44. It was only when I had become a little bit a senior in my in my career, and then I began to see that my stammering is affecting my my career and profession. I mean, then I began taking that feedback very seriously. As long as I was young, I had this attitude, who cares? But around 43, 44, I realized that life cannot go on like this. I must do something about it. I cannot run any more from this problem. So I think all of us have to find that point or that motivation. Vijay has got one more question. He wants to know how effective is delayed auditory feedback machines.
Yeah, I remember you asked that question in the Telegram group as well. So there's a lot we know and there's a lot we don't know. So I'll start with broad strokes. So there are lots of. Has anybody knows that? Do I need to explain anything about what delayed auditory feedback or frequency altered feedback? Do people understand what that
I,
is?
I, I think we can ask Vijay. He's got a scientific background. He must
Okay.
have done some research, some market research. Vijay, बताइए क्या है ये DAF?
Sir, regarding DAF, so I read it, and also I have called one supplier. So it's related with it's like a hearing aid, and that means instrument is to be put in ear, and whatever we are talking, that will be listened to us. I mean, suppose I'm talking, the same sound will be listened to me, and so that will create some sort of like humming in the brain or something, like it will so I think it will be, what do you call it, divert the attention from from the anxiety, and the speech will be so it's my perception that the speech will be smoothly coming out. And I tried this with some sort of songs. I put the microphone in my ear and I played a song loudly, and I have tried to read the things, and I have recorded my sound out. Okay, and and the sound coming out was very smooth. Means I read the whole passage, and there was not a single stammering. So so I don't know, but it has happened.
How much is
And
the price? How much is the price?
no, sir, so I have tried microphone, sir.
Okay, okay.
I
No, no, no,
mean,
no. The dealer was asking for how much? Did you
uh,
found out?
sir. The price was 35,000.
35,000. ठीक है. Back to
Yeah,
Dr. Amit. Back to Amit.
Yeah, as can you unpin Dr. Aware again?
Yes, yes,
Please? Okay.
yes.
So yeah, as he has explained, that is what the technology is. There are different, there is this DF stands for delayed auditory feedback. It sounds like an echo. So whatever you're saying comes to your own speech comes to you a fraction of a second slower. That's the delayed auditory feedback. You can also adjust how slow it is. You can go as low as 50 microseconds to all the way to 250, 500. So the greater the delay, the more you're going to have an impact on your speech. And I'll talk a little bit about what the impact on the speech really is. Then the other kind of feedback is the frequency altered feedback, where if it's just purely frequency altered feedback, not combined with delayed auditory feedback, typically what happens is that in FAF or frequency altered feedback, you hear yourself at a different pitch. So you don't hear yourself in an echo, you hear yourself at a different pitch, either a half an octave higher or a half an octave lower, or you can also adjust that. Okay. Typically, the adjustments in frequency altered feedback are lower because there's a Lombard effect. There's a typical tendency to match what we are hearing. So if you're hearing ourselves at a higher pitch, we will start speaking at a higher pitch, which is going to strain us laryngally. So the typical response is to start with a lower octave versus a higher octave. Anyway, that's a technicality. Third is what Dr. Aware is reporting, which is masking noise. So if you wear headphones and play some music or play random noise, white noise or whatever, which obliterates your own auditory feedback, your natural auditory feedback, that is effective as well. Now, there are different degrees of effectiveness. So the most effective is when you combine delayed auditory feedback with frequency altered feedback. That is when it is most effective, because then you're hearing yourself in an echo, but and you're hearing yourself at a slightly different pitch. So the signal is altered in a very substantial way. The least effective is what Dr. Aware is reporting, which is the masking noise. In all of these situations, whether it's delayed auditory feedback, frequency altered feedback, masking noise, any kind of alteration in the auditory feedback, there are very limited to normal adaptation effects, transfer effects, which is to say कि अगर आप डिवाइस निकाल दें अपने कान से, अगर ये डिवाइस निकाल दें, DF निकाल दें, frequency altered feedback निकाल दें, तो your speech is going to go back to what it was. So there isn't transfer, there isn't carryover, in the sense that it's not a substitute for speech therapy. I mean, people position it as a substitute for speech therapy because you can use it in a very selective way. For example, if you've got an interview coming up and you feel a lot of pressure to be fluent in that situation, or you've got a presentation that's coming up, you have to feel extremely comfortable and fluent in that situation. In those situations, you use it more. Now, there are a couple of caveats to this, couple of qualifications to all this. Number one, it is not effective in the same way for everybody. Not all of us who are people who stammer, when they wear the DF device or the FAF device or anything, are going to gain the same way. Some people will gain more, some people will gain less. In fact, it is reported that for about a third of the people who stammer, it may be actually less effective compared to the rest of the people. So there is an individual response. There's a lot of individual variation in how people respond, how effective delayed auditory feedback, frequency altered feedback, or masking noise is going to be for everybody, right? It's not the same for everyone. Second, there are no carryover effects, in the sense that once you take the device off, it's not that you become more fluent in general, you go back to where you were. And the third thing, which is actually the most important thing to take into account, is there is also an adaptation effect. So the more you use it, the less effective it typically is. And that is speaking to what Dr. Aware is saying in terms of the distraction. So now I'll come to why it works, right? There are lots of theories and conjectures as to why alteration in auditory feedback works for us, for most of us, not for everybody, and certainly not for everybody in the same way, but why it works in the first place. So there's a litany of reasons, hypotheses, conjectures. There's a ton of research on this. People have spoken about this for years. So I'm not going to get into all that. I'll speak to 2 or 3 important highlights. Number one, presumably it corrects for what is going on neurologically. Because research indicates that neurologically, हमारी जो वायरिंग है, हमारी जो ब्रेन की वायरिंग है, वो ऐसी है कि there isn't a consistent, there isn't the typical connection between auditory processing and speech production. So brain में centers हैं which will process the signal, auditory processing, जो हम बोल रहे हैं उसको brain perceptually कैसे process कर रहा है, or there are centers in how we produce speech. So the connection between auditory processing and speech production and language formulation has been questioned. in the research among people who stammer, that they are not integrating auditory processing with language formulation, with speech production as efficiently as somebody who is fluent. So what delayed auditory feedback or any sort of auditory manipulation in the signal is doing is correcting for that whatever deficiency, defect, anomaly, jo bhi aap bula le usko, right? Something, whatever is going is different in our brain, it is correcting for it. So that's one theory, why it works. Second theory, and these are not exclusive, they could also work, these factors could actually work together and not one or the other, is that there's an inherent distraction in the signal. Because by attending to, because we have an interfering signal, it distracts us from the conditioned pattern of behavior. So we would have seen also that when we start talking in an accent, we all of a sudden become more fluent. वो क्या है? It gets us out of the conditioned pattern for a while. It allows us to direct our attention towards something else, right? If you direct your attention towards something else, then the brain starts focusing on that particular object and not the actual speech. And of course, speech, our speech, because we stammer, we have anxiety and fear around stammering, our speech, our body interprets as a threat. So the threat perception goes away to a certain extent because your brain is attending to some other signal, which is the reason to explain why adaptation happens. Because over time, the more you use it, the brain gets used to the signal, so it's less effective. The interference, which is advantageous, is no longer advantageous because the brain has adapted. All right, that's also a facet of neuroplasticity, how the brain is going to adapt to any signal over time. The third reason it works. So one was the neurological reason, one is the distraction reason, the distraction hypothesis, and the third reason why it works. And of course, these are not exclusive. Like I said, they could all work together. These reasons could all be combined, and they could all work together, is because in dealing with alterations in auditory feedback, in dealing with delayed auditory feedback and frequency altered feedback, we are changing the way that we are producing speech. So typically, under delayed auditory feedback, frequency altered feedback conditions, the speech rate gets slower. Our duration of vowel sounds, our duration of vowels in the that we are speaking, our duration of all segments gets a little bit longer. If the segment duration gets a little bit longer, the speech rate decreases. I'll give you an example. I'm going to recite two sentences over and over again, and I'm going to recite them in a slightly different way. I'm going to keep my inflection, prosody all the same, but I'm going to change a little bit. So here we go. Number one. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow. Number two. When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow. Third, when the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act like a prism and form a rainbow. You notice that from my first time I read it, to the second time, to the third time, my rate got lower. How did my rate get lower? I did not put any pauses. I just prolonged my speech segments a little bit, just prolonged my consonants and my vowels a little bit. This prolongation, which is taught in TISA as well, is changing the rhythm pattern in the speech. So in speech therapy, when we do speech motor work, we attend to two things. We attend to the timing and we attend to the tension. So when you alter the timing, which is to say, when you start speaking in a prolonged way, when you start speaking with vowel durations which are a little bit longer, the rhythm of the speech changes. And that's the go-to strategy in most fluency shaping programs. So what's happening is, it is because of speech motor control now is being influenced by that auditory interference. Because in order to deal with that auditory interference, we are compensating by increasing the vowel durations and the segment durations of our speech. Our rate is going down. तो अगर हम DF को एडजस्ट करके देखें कि 50 मिलीसेकंड की सेटिंग और 250 मिलीसेकंड सेटिंग में क्या अंतर है, अंतर यही होगा कि in 250 millisecond delay you're going to get more prolongation, lower speech rate. In a 50 millisecond delay, you're going to get a faster speech rate. You're going to sound more natural, but you're also likely to stammer more, even in that situation. So what it's doing is, in adapting, in compensating for the interference that delayed auditory feedback, frequency altered feedback is causing, our body is adjusting speech motor control. And in the process of adjusting speech motor control, more vowel prolongations, more continuous phonation, keeping the voicing on the whole time. Now, these things can be done with speech therapy, right? But it's not reliable, because using these behaviors on a regular basis is very challenging for most of us. But they can be done automatically through delayed auditory feedback and frequency altered feedback. The effect is going to be very similar, that you're changing the rhythm pattern of the speech. And the rhythm pattern of the speech is changing to compensate for the interference effect that is going on with the auditory processing. So this is the broad, big picture stuff, right? So why does it work? These are the 3 or 4 main theories. We can get down to the neurology of it and talk about mirror neurons, but we don't have to go there. But the point is, this is accessible to almost everybody, that we've got an auditory signal that is changing, and the auditory signal is changing the brain wiring to a certain extent, making those connections. Whatever the defect is in auditory processing, language formulation, speech production, it's correcting for it. You're changing your speech motor control in the process, but you're also taking advantage of the distraction effect. These are the 3 main theories about why it usually works. But again, it's not working for everybody. It doesn't work all the time. And certainly people reserve these, we call them assistive technologies. People quite often who procure these. DF is also available in app. You can get a DF app. The Apple Store or any of these app stores you have a DF app that you can also get. The problem with the app is it doesn't work on the phone. So if you're on the phone, the app is not going to work. But in a face-to-face interaction, you can use it. I have tried DF and FF many times in my life, because I teach this stuff. I'm involved in I teach the graduate course. I do some research in this area. So I've tried all these technologies over many years. I don't like it because it just interferes with the way I'm thinking. It just, it's to me, it's very distracting to constantly process this interruption in my speech signals in this speech signal. So one of the research projects I've had for some years is, do people get more fluent, but at the cost of language complexity? Do people start speaking in simpler sentences? Do people start saying less, but speaking more fluently? But are they speaking other trade-offs in the use of DAF and FAF devices? Because if it is an interfering signal, then do people adjust by also reducing the language complexity? They also adjust by speaking less. So is it like similar to avoidance behavior in that way?
I was reading somewhere that another problem is that DAF picks up other sounds from the room also.
Yeah.
Did you notice that when you were using it? Did you?
Yeah, it does. So the earlier versions of DF, the technology has evolved, right? So now there's much less interference from
Other
external
people.
auditory signals, kind of like hearing aid, right? It's like it's in the ear hearing aid device, as Dr. Avare is saying. So in that way, also hearing aids have improved a lot over the years too. This used to be the same problem with hearing aids that you could hear everything else, and everything was amplified. Now it is more selectively amplified. Yeah.
And is it true that if normal people are given a deaf machine, they start stammering?
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a very interesting point.
We
That
should
it's
buy it
not
for family members. We should buy it for our normal family members. Check it out. Check it out. Let them
yeah, no,
stammer.
it's true. It's not what they do is normal. Typically fluent speakers don't actually start to stammer, but they get more disfluent. So you can be more disfluent, but not push and have laryngeal blocks and all that stuff.
Yes.
So reason, I'll take 2 seconds because this is a very important point. I want to make that connection here. आपने नोटिस किया होगा कि जब आप कीबोर्ड पे टाइप करते हैं और कीबोर्ड पे की स्ट्रोक अगर आप लगाते हैं तो उसका जो लेटर जो अपीयर करता है स्क्रीन पे इंस्टेंटली इट कम्स आउट, इंस्टेंटली आता है. लेकिन अगर थोड़ा सा गैप हो between pressing the keystroke and when the letter will appear, you are going to wait for the letter to appear before you put the next keystroke. There's a typical tendency to wait for the signal, the feedback, before you move on to the next thing. That is because the body is a servo mechanism system, which is to say it's a closed loop system. Another way of saying it is that it's constantly adjusting the intention with what it sees, which is why when we have a slip of tongue, we go right back and we repeat what we said because that's not what we intended to say. So it's like the thermostat in this room, right? This room has a thermostat. It is constantly adjusting कि क्या temperature होना चाहिए, क्या temperature है, and constantly adjusting the temperature in the room. Our body is very similar. So because we are waiting for the next the letter to appear in the same way when we are talking, but the signal hasn't come to us yet. We are waiting for the signal to come to us before we say the next thing. As a result, we're getting slower because we are waiting for the signal. Kind of a very similar thing as the keystroke example I'm trying to give you, right? So I'm trying to answer your question about what happens to people who do not stammer when they use these devices. The reason this happens is because their auditory system is functioning appropriately. Right? So that is speaking to the original theory that what is DF and FAF is doing is correcting for the auditory anomaly that we have. The auditory system is not speaking to the speech production system in a very reliable way. And so what DF and FAF is doing is introducing redundancy in the system. Because you're hearing yourself again, because you're hearing yourself at a different pitch, it is a more redundant signal. This redundancy is actually quite helpful to people who stammer because it is correcting for whatever is the auditory processing issue. Now, if you're a typically fluent speaker, you don't have an auditory processing issue. So it's just going to interfere. It's like the keystroke problem. You're going to wait for the next thing to appear on the screen before you hit the next keystroke. Kind of a similar kind of a way. But what typically fluent people experience under altered auditory feedback states, particularly DF and FAF, is not stammering. What they experience is the disfluency. So they will hesitate more, they will repeat more, they'll have more co-articulation, they'll have all of these kinds of things, but they won't struggle, right? It's not going to simulate an actual stammer or a block or a repetition or a prolongation. They don't experience that. They just experience these little anomalies. Yeah.
Next question is about McGuire program. While we are at it, let us answer this question also. McGuire. You are on mute? Are you on mute?
I'm sorry. Yeah, so I was going to say the McGuire program is one variation of the fluency shaping program. This is the kind of program I was talking about earlier. These are immersive programs where you spend many hours a day working on your speech, learning to talk differently, learning to breathe differently, learning to produce voice in a different way, learning to articulate in a very different kind of a way. So yeah, there are there's fair amount of research to indicate that it works. There's a fairly variable relapse rate. So that's true for any fluency shaping program. Not all these techniques are going to stick as well with everybody. There's almost a 50% relapse rate quite often, not necessarily in the McGuire program, but in fluency shaping programs in general, that some people go on to become more fluent speakers for the rest of their life as long as they keep using these techniques. For some people, it's very difficult to do. But that's nothing specific to fluency shaping, I feel, because any time you're working on a lifelong, persistent problem, you're going to keep going back and forth between, whatever help you need, whether it's speech therapy or TISA or anything else. You might get more comfortable because of the TOPG experience that you've had. But over time, if you don't keep doing those things, if you go back to being an avoidant speaker, right? If you go back to the previous behavior, you're going to lose the gain. So that is not specific. The point is any sort of a process that you've gotten into has to be maintained on a consistent basis. So it's more of a problem with maintenance than it's a problem with the program itself. Yeah. But it's got a fair amount of successful treatment outcome data associated with it. Because if you're fundamentally changing the speech pattern, so the muscle activation is happening in the right kind of a way, you're going to experience more fluent speech. But the question is, how long do you keep practicing this? How long, right? All of this maintenance is going to be really, really.
Yeah, I think, and I think this last thing is very relevant for Gajendra to understand and realize that finishing TOPG doesn't mean that he should stop challenging himself, stop practicing. It's like brushing teeth. You can't stop it at any point in life.
ये भी बहुत ही बुनियादी बात है, क्योंकि जो भी चीजें हमने की हैं अब तक, जो भी गेन्स हैं हमारे, जो भी फायदे हैं हमारे, जो हमें मिले हैं, चाहे टीओपीजी में है, चाहे स्पीच थेरेपी है, जो भी कॉम्बिनेशन है, वो फायदे जो मेंटेन करने के लिए हमको we got to keep working at it. So to your point, if Gajendra stops challenging himself, goes back to being in his comfort zone, then it's going to be different. If Manish, who did this fantastic presentation at the mall, when he took the microphone and talked to everybody, if he stops doing all of this, then he's going to feel the fear again. He's going to feel anxiety again. So this is a lifelong process. So that's why I think thinking about stammering is more of a journey than a particular destination to come to. Is like a really important mindset that this is something that we need to work on, and you can see it as a personal developmental opportunity. What you have also said in one of the podcasts, that if you look at stammering as a portal that you can move through and develop and grow from, then it changes your entire mindset around it. It's the one challenge we have in our life that we can actually do something about on a regular basis and feel that we are being successful.
So one question I want to ask Gajendra. Gajendra, how can you continue these little challenges, these little activities which have helped you in TOPG? What I mean, क्या करने से ये चीजें आगे भी कंटिन्यू होती रहेंगी? क्या किस शक्ल में, किस फॉर्म में, क्या सोचते हैं आप? एक तरीका ये हो सकता है कि आप कह सकते हैं कि आप बोर्ड कहीं पे लगा लें कि आई एम TOPG सर्टिफाइड स्पीच थेरेपिस्ट, और आप लोगों को बुलाना शुरू कर दें कि आओ मेरे पास, मैं तुम्हारा हकलाना ठीक करूंगा, और फिर उनको आप सिखाओ टेक्निक्स। तो जब आप उनको सिखाओगे तो आपकी अपनी अपने आप प्रैक्टिस हो जाएगी। मगर ये तरीका अनएथिकल है, और कोई डिस्ट्रिक्ट हेल्थ ऑफिसर आपके खिलाफ एक्शन भी ले सकता है, क्योंकि वो कहेगा कि आपके पास आपके पास TOPG की डिग्री है मगर आपके पास प्रॉपरली ट्रेन स्पीच थेरेपिस्ट आप नहीं है। तो तो ऐसा क्या तरीका हो सकता है कि आप इनके टच में रहें, इनको प्रैक्टिस करते रहें, भूल न जाएं?
Yeah. ऐसा जैसे हमारी लाइक ये जो जर्नी है स्टैमरिंग की, मतलब ये जो ये लाइफ लॉन्ग जर्नी है, तो स्टिल अभी जो ये पार्ट है, ये तो बहुत मतलब छोटा पार्ट है जो मैंने कंप्लीट किया है। तो मतलब इसको और डिफरेंट सिचुएशंस में जाके, फॉर एग्जांपल मेट्रो, मैंने अभी मेट्रो में नहीं किया है, सो आई प्लान टू डू दैट इन मेट्रो,
हाँ।
और आई इन बस ऑल्सो आई हैव नॉट डन इट येट, so I will try those like that. That is like more challenging for me.
राइट।
So I am planning to do that in coming time. That was my plan.
अगली बार जब आप फ्लाइट लेते हैं ना दिल्ली से बैंगलोर की, तो फ्लाइट में
Hmm.
भी जरूर करिएगा एक बार, एयर होस्टेस
Okay.
को जरूर बाउंस करके बोलिएगा, ए ए एक्सक्यूज मी। अच्छा, लेकिन मैं जानना ही चाहता हूँ गजेंद्र, ये अपने बलबूते करना थोड़ा मुश्किल होगा, क्योंकि मैं यकीन से कह सकता हूँ कि एक हफ्ते के बाद आपकी प्रायोरिटीज बदल चुकी होंगी, आपके ऊपर कुछ अन्य प्रेशर आ जाएंगे, और आप भूल
Yeah.
ही जाओगे कि मुझे मेट्रो में जाके करना है, बस में जाके करना है, नहीं भूल जाओगे आप। तो ऐसा क्या
मतलब इसमें
करना
मतलब
करें
मेरा
कि
ये
आप
भी है।
याद रखें इसको?
हाँ,
हाँ।
जैसे अभी मेरी मतलब यही है, मतलब जो मतलब मैं मेरे पास पहले नहीं था, लाइक नाउ आई एम प्लानिंग विथ नोट्स, कुछ मतलब लिख के जो मेरे पास है, ताकि मैं वो भूलूं नहीं। तो मैं ये मतलब अभी नया प्लान कर रहा हूँ, जो मैंने पहले कभी नहीं किया था। पहले क्या था, हाँ मैंने ये सोचा ये करना है, और लाइक मैंने आज सोचा, कल मतलब वो चला गया माइंड से।
हाँ, इसीलिए मैं कर रहा हूँ कि कई बार आदमी सोचता बहुत कुछ है, चाहता
हाँ,
बहुत कुछ है, लेकिन वो
राइट।
भूल जाता है, मतलब तमाम चीजें उसके ऊपर हावी हो जाती हैं। तो एक्चुअली मैं कोशिश ये कर रहा था कि आप धीरे 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 उस दिशा में जाएं जिधर मैं आपको ले जाना चाहता हूँ, और वो दिशा है कि अगर आप किसी SHG से नियमित रूप से जुड़े हैं, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप से, तो ये एक्टिविटीज अपने आप होती रहेंगी,
हाँ
आपको अपने
सर,
आप को
जैसे
याद नहीं
वही
दिलाना
नोएडा में
पड़ेगा।
हूँ, तो मतलब हमारे यहाँ नोएडा में भी हमारा ग्रुप है, तो हम लोग
हाँ
यहाँ भी करते हैं नोएडा में।
हाँ हाँ, अगर आप किसी ग्रुप में जाते हैं, महीने में
हम्म।
2 बार भी जाते हैं, तो वहाँ पे कोई ना कोई एक्टिविटी जरूर ऐसी हो रही होगी जो आपको
या
फायदा पहुंचाएगी,
या श्योर।
और जो आपको आपके लिए चैलेंजिंग भी होगी। तो SHG
बिल्कुल
से
सर।
जुड़े रहिए, SHG को चलाइए, कहीं पर अगर SHG नहीं है तो अपना एक SHG शुरू करिए। तो ये मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि SHG
श्योर।
जो है वो मोस्ट नेचुरल एनवायरनमेंट है, which can help your further journey, your forward journey.
या श्योर।
Okay, okay. So before we conclude, I just want to quickly find out about Akash Vats. I'm seeing his name for the first time. So Akash, can you please introduce yourself?
हाय सर।
हाँ, थोड़ा अपने बारे में बताइए।
हाय सर। गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन। मेरा नाम आकाश है सर, और मैं दिल्ली से हूँ। और मैं सर जॉब करता हूँ, गवर्नमेंट जॉब। और सर मैंने ग्रुप में जुड़ा हुआ, तो मैं लॉन्च मीटिंग्स डेली अटेंड करता हूँ जो ग्रुप में आती है 8 बजे की। तो सर मैं इसलिए आज आपका मैसेज देखा इसलिए आ गया सर।
नहीं, बहुत बढ़िया, बहुत अच्छी बात है आकाश। आकाश, आप दिल्ली में हैं, तो क्या आप कभी दिल्ली SHG में जाते हैं?
सर वो मेरे एग्जाम वगैरह है आगे, तो मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ सर। तो मैं थोड़ा स्टडीज में अभी हूँ, तो मैं इसलिए नहीं जाता सर।
अच्छा,
पर
कोई बात
मैं
नहीं, जब भी कभी मौका मिले
ऑनलाइन
आप,
ऑनलाइन अटेंड करता हूँ सर।
ठीक है, जब भी कभी मौका मिले आप दिल्ली SHG में भी जाना, ऑफलाइन में भी बहुत मजा आएगा। मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूँ, आपको बहुत मजा आएगा, आप बहुत एंजॉय करेंगे। आप ही की उम्र के लोग वहाँ पर हैं, और वो कुछ नई नई एक्टिविटीज करते रहते हैं एज ए ग्रुप, as a group of friends. So you'll really enjoy it whenever you can go. Okay, so I want to thank Dr. Amit Bajaj for sharing all these very interesting details about DAF, FAF, about McGuire, and about all these wonderful ideas. Thank you so much, Dr. Amit.
You're welcome. I hope it wasn't too complicated or over the top.
No.
I was trying to.
Don't
This is
don't underestimate us. Don't
no,
underestimate us.
no, it's not about that. I'm not confident about how I'm relaying this information. That's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking.
Haven't you heard that stammerers are very intelligent people? That is why they stammer.
Some exceptions included. I'm not very smart. I'm not intelligent.
They can easily understand you. They may not be able to paraphrase you, but they can understand you.
That's good to know. I want to just say one thing to what Indra just said about his plan. I want to equate it to what happens. Again, my background is more in speech therapy than it is on anything else. I want to bring that concept here. Basically what we are asking you, Gajendra, is कि आपका maintenance plan क्या है? क्योंकि जब आपने कोई चीज अचीव की है, कोई गेन अचीव की है, उसको मेंटेन करने के लिए क्या क्या प्लान है आपका? और यूजुअली मैं आपको सजेस्ट करना चाहता हूँ दो चीजें। एक चीजें तो ये है कि जैसे कि आप लिखते हैं, प्लानिंग करते हैं कि मैं इस टाइप पे इस जगह जाऊंगा, I'll do this and that and the other. Think very specifically कि आपके कंफर्ट जोन में क्या है और आपके स्ट्रेस जोन में क्या है और आपके स्ट्रेस जोन में क्या है। तो गोइंग फ्रॉम कंफर्टेबल टू लेस कंफर्टेबल टू मोर कंफर्टेबल, लीस्ट कंफर्टेबल, ये आइडिया जो है, ये आपकी जो प्लानिंग अगर होगी उसके अनुसार अगर आप जाएंगे, तो रिकमेंडेशन मेरी ये है कि आपको एक हफ्ते में एक चीज करनी चाहिए दैट इज विद इन योर कंफर्ट जोन, एक चीज करनी चाहिए दैट इज आउट ऑफ योर कंफर्ट जोन। Do at least one, do a check mark in each column once a week. और ये आपको आइडेंटिफाई करना है कि आपके क्या करना चाहते हैं, what is helpful to you, what does success look like for you. अगर आपको भी just like everybody else, you want to reduce your fear, you want to reduce your anxiety, अगर ये आपके most important goals हैं, तो उन गोल्स को अचीव करने के लिए अगर लगातार जो है आपके कंफर्ट जोन में आप क्या करते हैं जो एडवांटेज देता है आपको। दोस्तों के साथ बात करते हैं, स्टैमरिंग इंटरव्यू करते हैं, लगता है आपके वीडियो से कि वो आपकी कंफर्ट जोन में है। सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप में नोएडा में मीटिंग हो रही है, वहां जाते हैं, दैट विल आल्सो बी विद इन योर कंफर्ट जोन। तो go do one thing a week that is in your comfort zone, because that's going to keep you confident, that's going to keep you engaged, because that is easy to do. And that will also help you to do one thing that is out of your comfort zone, because now you have confidence that you've done one thing, so you can do something else that's a little bit more challenging. I think there is an advantage to doing things on a regular basis, which is in your comfort zone, because it keeps you engaged, keeps the momentum going. अगर momentum है आपके पास, if you have the inertia of motion, then you will keep doing something about it on a regular basis, challenging yourself further. So identify one thing in your comfort zone that you do on a weekly basis, and one thing that is out of your comfort zone. And I'm saying this specifically because you said कि आपने self disclosure metro में अभी नहीं किया है, बस में अभी नहीं किया है, maybe that is out of your comfort zone, इसलिए अभी आपने नहीं किया है। तो प्लान कि मैं 2 हफ्ते में 3 हफ्ते में I will do it at that point in time. So every week there should be a check mark. Have I done something in my comfort zone, and have I challenged myself to go out of my comfort zone? If you just do 2 things a week, you will stay engaged, you will stay attuned, and you will stay basically, yeah, that will be helpful.
Very true. Thank you so much, Dr. Amit. So guys, I think we should now